here in North London to meet Diane Samuels, whose play Kindertransport currently sits at number 3 out of the top 10 contemporary plays of 2010 to 2011. It's also a play with strong female roles, something that amateur groups across the country are on the lookout for. Diane, it's great to have you here. Now, your play Kindertransport was the joint winner of the Verity Bargate Award in 1992, followed by the Mayor Whitworth Award the following year, and it's also a GCSE set text. Tell us, first of all, what your play's about.
Well, it's inspired by the Kindertransports, which were, I suppose, transportations of children out of Nazi-occupied Europe during the years leading up to, a couple of years leading up to the Second World War, taking children in peril, Jewish children mostly, out of Europe and bringing them to England. And the play follows one particular child, Ava, who changes her identity and becomes Evelyn as an adult, and how, having been separated so traumatically from her family as a child in such difficult, dangerous circumstances, it has an impact on her relationships with her own daughter, and also looking back to relationships with the parents she lost and the foster mother who she forms a very strong bond with in England.
It's being performed all over the world, and it's also very popular with amateur groups. Why do you think that is?
I think it taps into something that's kind of universal of humour experience and something people really connect with. I mean, I get letters from groups who perform the play regularly saying how moved they were by it, and that is the way we have to separate from our parents, particularly our mothers. And often nowadays here in this country, fortunately, people get to experience that by naturally growing up, and when they get to a certain age they go off. But there's something about looking at a very extreme example of where this happens when someone's young, in dangerous situation, which it seems to touch on something very deep inside people and what it's like to let go of your children or to let go of your parents, you know. And I think it's that. I mean, there's also an interest, obviously, in the context in the stories of the Holocaust and surviving it. I think this is a story of survival, and I think people tap into that, how one survives these things, psychologically, emotionally, as much as physically.
Now, the play's set in a historical context. How much research did you do for it?
I interviewed a number of kinder who no longer are kinder, they're kind of elderly people, who came over on the trains, and found out really from them what the experience of being a range of people who had very different experiences. So it's fascinating to see the different kind of ways in which the children came to this country, who they stayed with, where they stayed, how much they retained contact with their Jewish background, their German background. Many converted to Christianity, so it's fascinating finding out about what happened to them from them. And I read lots of reminiscences. There's an organisation called Kindertransport Reunion, which got set up around the time of the 50th anniversary, which was around the time I was writing the play in '89, and they helped me as well. There's a woman called Bertha Leverton who gave me a lot of information. So people who, some people never talk about their experience. There are kind of two aspects to those who survive. Some never talk about it, and some will talk quite a lot about it. So those who would talk kind of were happy to help.
There's a very layered and moving mother-daughter relationship at the very heart of the play. How did you combine the historical and the professional?
By setting it in the attic, I've enabled the kind of whole world to come out of the attic. It's not entirely, it's not a naturalistic play, although it might feel very real at times. And so the whole world comes alive, the world of the past. Her younger self, Ava, inhabits the attic. People talk about the play that it has flashbacks. I get letters from students saying, you know, how do the flashbacks work? I don't think of them as flashbacks. I think of it as really, this is how this woman's inner life is right now in that moment of the play happening. And it includes aspects of her history, of her childhood, of her family, and what's going on in the present, and her dreams, her fears. There's a rat catch character, so it's all about the inner world of this woman. And in creating inner world, it's a bit like a dreamlike kind of landscape. You can bring in everything that happens, including huge historical events like you know, the beginning of the war and the end of the war. Actually going to see a newsreel at the end of the war. So the whole world comes alive in this room.
There are 5 good, strong female characters in this play and only 1 male, which is quite unusual. So was that a conscious decision on your part?
Well, I wrote the play just wanting to tell a story, and I really connected with this character, Evelyn, who had been a little girl Eva, and what she does is she disowns her young self, and her daughter finds out this hidden story in her mother's life. I suppose when you've got a central... I do write a lot of roles for women as central characters, just because I suppose I'm very interested, that's the experience I connect with and identify with, and I'm interested in. Funnily enough, my family is all male, and at the time I've got 2 sons and obviously an ex-husband who I was at the time living with when I wrote the play, and we even had a male dog, and so maybe I needed to write a play with lots of women in it to give me somewhere to have a woman's world, so that I have a lot of women friends. It's interesting, I think, that often, I don't think any male playwright is ever asked, why have you only got male characters in a play? And there are a lot of plays with mainly male characters or just male. I think you just write what that story wants as its framework dramatically, and that's the way it came out. It is a mother-daughter story on some level through generations. And so I've really focused on that. Intimate relationships between women are quite exclusive of men, actually. Women have relationships with men, but they have their friendships and their intimate relationships, sisters and mothers. And I think those are quite private often, and it's exciting to put that in the theatre, that privacy.
Well, Diane, it's been fantastic to talk to you today. Thank
Same
you very
here.
much for joining us.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Pleasure.